सर, राष्ट्रपति के अभिभाषण को समर्थन देने में मुझे आपने समय दिया, इसके लिए मैं आपका अपने दिल के गहराइयों से आभार व्यक्त करना चाहता हूँ. So I'm very fortunate that my maiden speech in this august house responds to the Honorable President's very articulate outlining of the government's plans ahead for the next 5 years and highlights the government's achievements over the last 10 years. Sir, I'm also extremely fortunate to have your esteemed presence in the chair during my maiden speech, for which I thank you, sir. सर, अपना भाषण शुरू करने से पहले इफ़ यू परमिट मैं अपने स्वर्गीय पिताजी मुरली देवरा जी को याद करना चाहूँगा, जिनकी जब निधन हुई, he was at that time a member of this august house and he always taught me to stand up for myself and to keep loyalty for the country before loyalty for the party. Sir, I'm sure today he is with me to guide me on this journey, on this new journey, I should say, sir, and to bless me. Sir, in many ways, life has come full circle because in 1977, 47 years ago, the late Balasaheb Thackeray supported my late father to become mayor of Mumbai's financial capital, Mumbai. And today, 47 years later, at the age of 47, I'm disclosing my age, the President of the Shiv Sena, Mr. Eknath Shinde ji, the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, has enabled me to represent Mumbai, Maharashtra and India through the Shiv Sena in the Rajya Sabha. Sir, I am returning to Parliament after exactly a decade, and a lot has changed. For one, we are in a very impressive new building. For the first time in India's history, we have an Adivasi woman President of India, and we have a leader who hails from a very, very humble background. जब लोग कहते हैं कि डेमोक्रेसी इज अंडर थ्रेट, मैं उनको एक जवाब देना चाहता हूं कि द फैक्ट दैट एक साधारण व्यक्ति जो एक रेलवे पटरी पर चाय बेच रहा था, आज दुनिया का सबसे बड़ा लोकतंत्र का प्रधानमंत्री है, उसका साफ मतलब है कि भारत का लोकतंत्र मजबूत है, भारत का संविधान मजबूत है. In Maharashtra too, sir, the Chief Minister, a very simple auto rickshaw driver. We have auto rickshaws in a certain part of Mumbai. An auto rickshaw driver rose to become the Chief Minister of the country's second largest state, the most industrialized state. This means for someone who is young and is watching us today that our democracy is in fact stronger than ever before. So, many people, my former colleagues who are not here today, who I'm sure when their chance comes to speak and through the public domain have been analyzing the Lok Sabha results in many, many ways. But the fact remains, as few people before me have pointed out, that Narendra Modi ji is only the second Indian to be sworn in as Prime Minister of India for 3 consecutive terms. The first being Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru exactly 62 years ago in 1962. In fact, something which has not been said before me, for the sake of not being repetitive, to give this House a sense of how high anti-incumbency levels are around the world. And this is due to a variety of factors. There is a growing aspirational, demanding voter. Social media is playing a role in making people more impatient. Demographic transitions are underway. In the last 10 years alone, Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has seen, and I will count down, 6 Prime Ministers of Pakistan, 5 Prime Ministers of the UK,
Please.
4 Presidents of Sri Lanka, 3 presidents of the USA, 2 presidents of France, and finally, after Sushma Swaraj ji, after a decade, 1 leader of opposition in the Lok Sabha. So, sir, मोदी जी का अभी भी पूरा 5 साल का कार्यकाल बाकी है और इसीलिए मैं एकनाथ शिंदे जी की ओर से, शिवसेना की ओर से, महाराष्ट्र की ओर से माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी को अपने दिल की गहराइयों से बधाई देना चाहता हूं, उनकी सरकार के सभी सदस्यों को बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं देना चाहता हूं। सर, चुनावी भाषणों में मैं अक्सर मजाक में कहा करता था कि यदि आप इंडिया अलायंस से यानी INDIA से यदि आप आई लेटर को हटाओगे तो आपको NDA दिखाई देगा। If you remove I from INDIA, you get NDA. My point I'm making is that despite all our political differences, I still believe that there's more that unites us than divides us. And a new beginning must call for a starting afresh. I am starting afresh, and I believe that as we move from confrontation to collaboration, we must replace the letter I with we. Sir, I wish to bring to your attention 4 C's, the letter C, that I'm sure everyone across this house will agree with me on, and we can rise above politics and agree that these are issues which concern our country. Some will see them as challenges. I personally see them as opportunities. So the first C is China. The second C is cities. The third C is computing. And the fourth C is climate change. All of these in varying degrees have been spoken about by the Honorable President. So when we talk of China, the first C, today both the West and the global South, the developed world and the developing world, has a trade deficit with China. But in addition to a trade deficit, they also have a trust deficit with China. And India in that sense is very, very unique. India today enjoys a trust surplus with the rest of the world. सर, इसलिए आज का समय बोल्ड होने और निर्णायक रूप से कार्य करने का समय है. सर, today global investors, global companies are adopting what they call a China plus one strategy. What that essentially means is that for the last 20 or 30 years, most of these companies moved their manufacturing from Western countries to China. They created jobs in China, they strengthened China's economy, and as a result today, they are seeing geopolitical tensions in the South China Sea and other parts of the world. Today, those same companies, those same countries, those same investors are moving investments, diversifying their factories to countries like India, to countries in the neighborhood, maybe Vietnam and Bangladesh. And as rightly pointed out by the Honorable President of India, so she made a very interesting remark. She said we must enhance cooperative federalism in our country between center and states, but far more importantly, competitive federalism between states. I have always been a firm believer that if states compete aggressively against each other, that is what will make India truly competitive globally. My good friend Jayant Chaudhary ji is here. I congratulate him, sir, through you for becoming a minister. I was just telling him now that as a skills minister, as a young minister of skills development, one area that we can focus on is upskilling our workforce. Today, we remain very low in terms of the number of women in our workforce. If we look at our immediate neighbors in South Asia, if we look at our neighbors like Vietnam in Asia, they have a much higher participation of women in our workforce. Having a program where we can upskill women in the workforce will be very, very useful for our country's economy. And now I believe is the time for India, leveraging on this China +1 strategy, to become a leader not just in South Asia, but in all of Asia. And the leader of Asia today, as we all know, will be the leader and the superpower of the world. So second C is cities. मेरे महाराष्ट्र के खासदार बोंडे जी ने शहरीकरण की बात की. शहरीकरण को कई लोग एक चुनौती के रूप में देखते हैं. सर, मैं राज्यसभा सांसद हूं महाराष्ट्र से, लेकिन मुंबई मेरी जन्मभूमि है, कर्मभूमि है. आई हैव अ स्पेशल प्लेस इन माय हार्ट फॉर मुंबई, एंड आई बिलीव व्हाट मुंबई इज टुडे, इंडिया विल बी टुमारो. Sir, today when we talk of urbanization, in our country only 1/3 of Indians, or 48 crore Indians, live in cities. The rest live in rural areas. Conversely, in a country like China, 2/3 of China lives in cities and 1/3 lives in rural areas. But the number of Indians living in cities in 5 or 6 short years is going to rise from 48 crore people to 59 crore people. Sir, मुंबई में आज मुंबई की संख्या 2 करोड़ है, और 5 या 6 सालों के अंदर मुंबई's population will become 3 crores. How we take advantage of this urbanization, how we plan our cities effectively, this will allow us to reap a demographic dividend. Sir, I certainly invite your esteemed self, sir, to visit Mumbai. I would, through this speech, invite many of my fellow MPs. In the last few years, massive transformations are underway in the city of Mumbai, where we are trying to absorb the influx of people, urbanization from rural to urban areas. And this is very, very critical for our economic growth. Sir, the third C I mentioned is computing. The Honorable IT Minister was in the House. I was hoping during my speech I would be able to draw his attention in some ways to this issue. But sir, superpowers of the 19th and 20th century were the countries that dominated the Industrial Revolution. The countries that become the superpowers of tomorrow, of the 21st century, will become countries that dominate in the area of artificial intelligence. And sir, हर उद्योग का एक प्रकार से एक रॉ मटेरियल होता है. आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, जो एक बहुत बड़े पैमाने पे इस पर चर्चा हो रही है पूरी दुनिया में, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस का जो रॉ मटेरियल है, वो रॉ मटेरियल डेटा है. और आज भारत इस रॉ मटेरियल का दुनिया का नंबर 1 सबसे बड़ा उत्पादक बनने वाला है. Today, the average Chinese person is consuming 32 GB of data per day. The average Indian is consuming only 24 GB of data per day. But Rijeju ji, in the next 4 years, India will become the largest data consumer in the world. The average Indian will consume 62 GB of data per day. We will be surpassing America, all of Europe, and even China. डेटा का मतलब क्या है? डेटा का मतलब है जब भी हम व्हाट्सएप पे वीडियो देखते हैं, यूट्यूब पे वीडियो देखते हैं, फेसबुक, इंस्टाग्राम पे जाते हैं, हमारी जो डेटा हम जो यूज़ कर रहे हैं, हम जो रॉ मटेरियल जनरेट कर रहे हैं भारत में, दैट रॉ मटेरियल इज अक्रूइंग वैल्यू इन कंपनीज इन अमेरिका, इन सिलिकॉन वैली. आई बिलीव सर, it is time for us to leverage that raw material, to leverage that natural resource, and to build the next Google, to build the next Facebook, to build the next WhatsApp coming right here out of India. That is what can give us superpower status, and that I believe is the vision of the Prime Minister under the Digital India initiative. So the fourth C I mentioned is climate change. सर कुछ समय पहले, कुछ ही दिन पहले इनफैक्ट, दिल्ली और नोएडा में बहुत अफसोस की बात है कि हीट वेव की वजह से कुछ लोगों की मृत्यु हुई. मैं Sir, who were these people who died? They were not, unfortunately for them, privileged people like us. They were rag pickers. They were manual laborers. They were security guards. Sir, fortunately today in Delhi, I can say that we have brought some good weather from Mumbai. There is some monsoon weather here. But sir, I'm glad that the Honorable President, in her speech, spoke extensively. Mr. Sudhanshu Trivedi, who initiated this debate, he also referred to that point, that the President of India spoke extensively about the greening of India's economy. Sir, the Prime Minister has set a very ambitious target for this country to become net zero by the year 2070. Once again, sir, many people will see this as a threat. I see the greening of India's economy as a massive opportunity for us to invest in the industries of the future. Today, sir, India can become a world leader in offshore wind energy. I read today that the government is using production-linked incentives that the cabinet approved recently to incentivize industry to generate electricity through offshore wind. In green hydrogen, the government has a very ambitious plan to build electrolyzers in India. Even with an open mind, we should think of nuclear. Even in a small area, sir, like seaweed cultivation, जो कि मैं प्रधानमंत्री को और एक बार बधाई देना चाहूँगा कि सीवीड कल्टीवेशन को यदि किसी ने भारत में स्पीयर हेड किया तो माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने किया जब वे गुजरात के मुख्यमंत्री हुआ करते थे. एंड सर, सीवीड इज द फूड ऑफ द फ्यूचर. The Japanese, sir, as we know, have been eating seaweed for centuries and they have the highest life expectancy. Seaweed is becoming an organic substitute for fertilizers. When it's mixed with fodder, it reduces methane gas emissions from cows. And India is a big livestock population, considering that we are the biggest dairy consumer and dairy producer. My dear friend Mr. G.K. Vasan is here. Sir, if you go to Tamil Nadu, the entire coast of Rameshwaram, the farmers are growing seaweed in abundance and exporting that. These are small industries which we should think about. Climate change, in my opinion, is an opportunity. Sir, I'll give you two small examples. आज यूरोप में रूस और यूक्रेन के बीच में वॉर हो रही है. Almost all of Europe was entirely dependent on Russia for their energy needs. Because of the war, Europe is forced to invest in innovative green technologies of the future. Wind energy, nuclear energy. Similarly, sir, you will recall in the 70s, जब अरब-इजराइल वॉर हुआ था, and उस समय अरबी देशों ने तय किया कि हम अमेरिका को ऑयल एक्सपोर्ट नहीं करेंगे, कच्चा तेल एक्सपोर्ट नहीं करेंगे. अमेरिका experienced what was called the oil shock. Petrol pumps were empty. Nobody could fill petrol and diesel. That was the first time under that time's President Jimmy Carter, when the first investment was made in photovoltaic solar technologies, which gave birth to solar energies. So every challenge presents in many ways an opportunity. Until such time as India becomes a world leader, creates technologies of the future, I'm glad that the government is using production-linked incentive schemes to incentivize and reduce our dependence on the supply chain that is dominated by countries like China, especially in electric vehicles, especially in solar, even going beyond climate change in the areas of semiconductor chips. So semiconductor chips is something now, हर एक गाड़ी में, हर एक के हमारे जो टैबलेट है, हर एक माननीय सांसद के टेबल पर, everything requires that microchip. And Taiwan, small country, has in some ways a monopoly, producing almost 95% of the world's chip. I congratulate this government for diversifying from Taiwan and for bringing semiconductor plants in India for the first time. Sir, मैंने कहा कि हमें ये समय है to be bold, to be decisive, and for the government to act. For the first time, as I said, in 62 years, there is a third consecutive term government. सर, मैं एशिया के हमारे एक पड़ोसी देश का एक बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग उदाहरण शेयर करना चाहता हूँ, जिसमें भारत के साथ कई सिमिलैरिटीज़ है एंड इट कैन बी अप्लाइड इन सम वेज टू इंडिया. Sir, Singapore, the founding father of Singapore and the first Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, who I have had the pleasure to meet several times. And he was a very good friend of India's. He was a well-wisher of India's. Sometimes people wonder when they go to Singapore, how did this man, in a short span of time, sir, how did he transform a former British colony where most of the people lived in झुगी झोपड़पट्टी में रहते थे, slums में रहते थे. There was no health care. There was rampant illiteracy. There were ethnic tensions. There were communal riots. Sir, he took 3 simple but very controversial decisions at the time. I'm in no way advocating those decisions for India, but I'm just pointing it out when I talk about being bold. His first decision, he said, despite the fact that in Singapore there were Indians, largely our Tamil brothers and sisters, there were ethnic Chinese, there were Malays, people from Malaysia. He said, I want everyone to speak English because that is the language of the future and that is what will make Singaporeans employable globally. Second thing he did was, he said, I want to attract the best talent from around the world to come live, work in Singapore and strengthen the economy of Singapore. The third thing he did, which this I think everyone will agree with, he said politicians must be paid salaries equal to the private sector so that there is no corruption whatsoever. And sir, he achieved honestly nothing short of a miracle. So sir, my limited point, a third consecutive term government is historic. It's a record government. The world is watching India. There are global tailwinds. Being from Mumbai, I meet a diverse section of people. People want India to succeed today. It is for us to be bold. It is for us to be decisive. It is for us to act very, very aggressively. Sir, अपने भाषण समाप्त करने से पहले, the reason I'm not taking my, I've already reached 22 minutes. I thought I've not reached. Sir, अपने भाषण समाप्त करने के पहले. Thank you, sir. सर, अपने भाषण समाप्त करने के पहले मैं कुछ कहना चाहूँगा जो माननीय राष्ट्रपति जी ने सरकार की उपलब्धियों के बारे में कहा. But I believe that there is one उपलब्धि, one achievement which stands out above all achievements. And I say this as a Mumbaikar. Sir, under this government, cities like Mumbai have been completely eradicated of terror attacks during the last decade. Regrettably, this was a regular feature. So I've represented Mumbai. I was the MP of South Mumbai when 26/11 happened. From 2006, there was a train blast. There was 26/11 in 2008. There was the Zaveri Bazaar and the serial blasts in Mumbai. All of this has been eliminated. At that time alone, 400 people died. Sir, I believe national security of our country is paramount. If we want to grow our economy, we want investors to come here, we have to ensure that our national security is protected, our national security remains stronger than ever, and I congratulate this government for ensuring that, not just in a city like Mumbai, but across the country. Sir, with these words, I didn't realize I've already crossed 24 minutes, but I'm extremely grateful to you, sir, for the time and for being present in the chair while I make my maiden remarks, sir. Thank you very much.